Buenos tardes, Puerto Rico. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for being here this evening. My name is Nicholas Poletto, Nicolas, and I am the Director of Education for Kobrand Fine Wine and Spirits, the leading importer of fine wines across the United States of America. Welcome. I'm excited to be here with you this evening. I am going to be walking you through some beautiful Italian wines. And I wanted to start off by telling you a little bit about myself. I travel around the world drinking wine, tasting wine, speaking with winemakers, visiting wine places, and then coming back and educating people about them. And that's what we're going to do tonight. If you want to follow us on Instagram, there you can see me at Nick Wine Journal. If you want to just sit back and relax and listen to the birds and enjoy a few glasses of wine, that's okay too. So let's get started. We are going to Italy. But first, we are going to speak about the three wines you have hopefully in front of you this evening. First and foremost, you have Tenuta del Cabreo, La Pietra. This is 100% Chardonnay, a beautiful balance of acidity, fruit, and depth. Next, you will have a wonderful wine from the town of Arezzo, just east of Chianti, called Crognolo. And then last but not least, we will dip all the way over to the Maremma, maybe even jump in the ocean for a little bit, have a nice swim, come out and enjoy a glass of Tenuta San Guido Guidalberto. So off we go. Hopefully you have these in front of you, and this is the order that we will be tasting these. Let's start by jumping on that next flight and heading over to Italia. For you, you probably fly out of San Juan. For me, I'll fly out of JFK. Either way, I'll meet you in Italy. So off we go. And when you take a look at this image here, you can see Sicily there in the south, the little island, the soccer ball being kicked by the boot. And you see Africa to its south, bringing all this wonderful warm air and wind to the north. And there you see Sicilia. And then just on the toe there is Calabria. On the heel is Puglia, then Basilicata, and then Naples, the cradle of wine. And as we go west here, you see the island of Sardinia. Some beautiful, rich, red and white wines coming from that island as well. But as we come back into the center of Italy, you can see Lazio, Rome, the Vatican. And what I want to show you, which is very important to our discussion this evening, are the mountains that run the spine of Italy, known as the Apennine Mountains. And there you can see them there running right up and down the spine of Italy. And that is very important. You can see a couple skiers there. Why is this so important? This is important because it brings wonderful cool wind and air down into all of central and southern Italy, but most importantly, Tuscany. And that is what we are discussing today. Now, what I thought we'd do for just 2 seconds is back up again and look at this map. Maps really help you understand the styles of wines and the different regions of where they come from. I'm not going to walk you through all of these, but it's important to see where it says Montalcino right here. That right there, that is the most premium, one of the most premium growing areas in Tuscany. And you can see it's on the same line. It cuts through France. It's on the same line as Rioja. Goes right into Spain. Now, what are we talking about today? We are talking about Tuscany. And Tuscany lives right in here. It is beautiful, Tuscany. It is made for the grapevines. And when you move in closer to Tuscany, we are going to cover 3 important areas today. But I want to point out to you a few of the really important areas that you should know if you are going to walk into a wine shop. And by the way, if you are going to walk into a wine shop, may I recommend El Oreo? That is where you should go. phenomenal selection, wonderful older vintages. That is where I would go for these wines, as well as any other Italian wines or wines in general. But let's go back to Tuscany for a minute. When you look at Tuscany, you can see this gray area here. And this is Chianti in gray, the entire area. Anything within there is Chianti. In the north, you have Rufina. You've probably heard of that. And then right in the center, you have Greve. Greve is the most important, premium, best growing area. We call it Chianti Classico. But there's a town there called Greve, which you can see, Greve, and that's where the very best Chianti comes from. Now, you might be saying to yourself, Nick, I didn't see you mentioning Chianti as one of the 3 wines I'm drinking this evening. You're correct. You're not. But you are drinking a Chardonnay that comes from those same hills in that same town of Greve. And that wine is La Pietra. Now, there's a few other areas you should know. Montalcino, of course, very famous. Brunello di Montalcino. These are some of the most expensive wines coming from Tuscany. Montepulciano, another gorgeous fortified town. San Gimignano, white wines only. Bolgheri, the home of the Super Tuscan. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is where all those wonderful Cabernet and Merlot-based red wines from Tuscany live. And we'll talk more about that. First, let's take a look at where we are. This is Tuscany. It is beautiful. And you can imagine that it not only is a large region, 5th largest region, but there is something very unique about it. And this is what makes it so special. The majority of the area is hilly and mountainous. Now you might be thinking, Nick, why would I want a hilly and mountainous area? I'm trying to grow grapes. Wouldn't I want a flat, rich soil growing area? That's what I want for my tomato plants. That's not what we want for grapes. We want hilly, rolling hills, getting lots of wonderful sunlight. When the rain comes down and runs off the side of the hills, stressing the vines, forcing it to work hard. And as those vines work hard, those berries become smaller and smaller and smaller, becoming more and more concentrated with more and more flavor. There's only one other region in Italy that has this kind of premium rolling hills and style, and that is Piemonte. This is what Tuscany looks like. Now, sure, not every part of Italy looks like this. They do have cities there, but you'd only have to go about a mile, 2 miles outside the city center of Rome, Florence, Milano, and all of a sudden you can see these kind of hills and these vineyards. This is a beautiful, perfect growing area. The hills, the soil, the weather, the Mediterranean climate, combined with those cool mountain breezes coming off the Apennines. This is heaven for the grapevine. Now, let's start with Chianti Classico. I've already told you where it is, but what you need to know is that it is the most prized area in all of Chianti. Why is it so prized? Because it sits at the foothills of those Apennine Mountains. Again, we like elevation for vines. We like exposure to sunlight. We like rocky, poor soil. Mountains give you that. You get the cool breezes coming down off the mountains, which help retain the wonderful acidity in the wine. Higher elevation means cool nights so the grapes can go home and go to sleep at night. West facing, meaning they get most of the sunlight. They get the afternoon sun, which is the strongest sun, which I'm sure you guys know. And you get wonderful rocky soil. That first wine you have, La Pietra, please pour it now. It is one of my favorite wines. I'm going to tell you a secret that I think will help you as you go ahead, not just from this course, but other courses. What I want to tell you is the 20-20 rule. What is the 20-20 rule? This is the rule you will learn to live by from now on. We drink our reds too warm, we drink our whites too cold. So the 20-20 rule is Take your white out of the fridge 20 minutes before you drink it, and put your red in the fridge for 20 minutes before you drink it. Yes, I said, put your red in the fridge for 20 minutes. You want the temperature to be about 60 degrees Fahrenheit, cellar temperature. And these two gentlemen here, they have produced for you glass number 1. On the right-hand side, you see the owner, Ambrogio, that's the father. On the left-hand side here, you see Giovanni, his son. They own and produce a wine in an estate that dates back to the 1300s. They've owned it since 1971. They own 200 acres right in that famed heart area called Chianti Classico, but in the town of Greve that I talked to you about. And while they have many estates, they're quite an aristocratic family. It is this right here, Cabreo, that is what we're drinking today and one of their most famous. And this is the estate that it comes from. What you can see here in the foreground, those are all olive groves. They make incredible olive oil as well. But back here, you can see all the beautiful vines. Those vineyards right there go into the wine you're drinking right now. And why is this area so special? Well, it's special because it's on the hillside. And for Chardonnay, you need that cool air to remain that acidity so the wine is vibrant and bright. Go ahead, spin that wine in your glass. Smell that wine. You should get wonderful ripe flavors of apple, ripe lemon, pear. And then you should also be getting the nuances of creaminess. And that's from the wine sitting on its lees, giving it that wonderful texture. Put the wine in your mouth, move it all around, hit the sides, the front, the back, and then swallow. And the amount that your mouth is acidifying, the amount that your mouth is salivating, that is going to tell you the acid level. And now you must ask yourself, is that acid level in balance with the amount of fruit that's in this wine? If the answer is yes, and the finish is long, then we've got a really good wine on our hands. And I would suggest that that is exactly what we have this evening. This is the other side of that vineyard. These vines right here make the wine that you have in your glass. It's only 36 acres, very small, 1,000 feet elevation. You can see how high up we are. It's in the Chianti Classico region. You get the cool climate, cool breezes coming down off these hillsides. 100% Chardonnay, barrel fermented, 12 months French oak, 6 months bottle aging. This is La Pietra. What does La Pietra mean? Pietra in Italiano, that means stone. And that's because these vines are grown on a very rocky soil. First vintage of this wine, 1983. And it spends 12 months in beautiful French oak barrels, developing wonderful, rich flavors, vanilla, cedar, nutmeg. And these are, if they are, which I think they are, but you have to tell me, if you believe they are well integrated, then we have a beautiful wine. I see the Wine Journal thinks it's good, and I appreciate that. Jump on our chat. If you've got a question for me, I can see those questions. I'd love to answer them. If you have a question in general about wine, go ahead and ask it. Now's the time. I am here to teach you about these 3 wines, but about Italy as a general education. Do you understand the difference between French and American oak? Do you understand why barrel fermentation is different than steel tank fermentation? Maybe you do, and that's impressive. If you don't, maybe you want to know. Ask it. From Chianti Classico, after we have had a wonderful meal with Giovanni and his father Ambrogio, we'll jump in our Fiat, all of us together, and we'll drive east for about 45 minutes. And we will come to the estate known as Únete, Sette Ponti. Únete, Sette Ponti in Italian means chateau or villa of the seven bridges. And why there are seven bridges is because if you go to Florence, which I hope you will go if you have not been, it is beautiful, the home of the Renaissance, Leonardo da Vinci, Michelangelo, go there. And after you've had some wonderful pizza and gelato, go walk. And you'll see the river that runs through Florence. It's called the Arno. And it's the most famous river in central Italy. And as that river winds through Florence and makes its way out east, if you count off seven bridges, you will arrive at this estate, Únete, Sette Ponti. And those bridges are particularly famous because they are also in the backdrop of the Mona Lisa. So the wine journal here is asking me, why do we smell fruit aromas on wine? Well, that's a great question, and probably the easiest question I'm going to get tonight. Because wine is fruit. The question you might be asking is, why do I get different types of fruit that are not grapes in wine? And that is because grapevines and grapes are filled. I should back up. Grapes made for making wine are filled, are compact with so many different flavors and aromas. And then when you have that magical moment of alcoholic fermentation, where you take all that grape juice and you transform it into wine, that's a magical moment. And you have all these reactions going on where you take the sugar and you make it into alcohol. It creates all of these esters, aromas that are very, very complex, which is why the most important thing you can do right now is smell your wine. We can smell 400 or 500 different smells. We can taste only 5. Salt, sugar, acid, bitterness, tannin. And there's no salt in this wine. And there's no sugar in this wine. So you have 3 things on the palate. Everything else is an aroma. So keep smelling. All right. This gentleman right here, you probably don't know him. His name is Dottore Moretti, but you probably know, and if you're lucky enough, you might be even wearing one of his products. While he didn't find, or he wasn't the founder of this company, he owns 6 Prada stores. Yes, Prada. So if you do go visit him, know he will be looking very sharp. And if you're lucky, maybe he'll even take you to one of his stores. So when you cross that 7th bridge at Sette Ponti, and as you cross through, you go over the Arno and you enter his property. And this is what it looks like. It's beautiful. This is in the town of Arezzo, Arezzo. And if you'll see here at the end of every row, there is a rose bush. Why would we do that? Well, I'll tell you why we do that. If you have rose bushes in your yard, maybe, I don't know if they have roses. I'm sure they must. I mean, Puerto Rico, the home of the roses, right? You guys are beautiful people with beautiful flowers down there. So you will know and you will remember that roses are very susceptible to disease. And so we plant roses here because if our rose bush begins to die, we know there's something bad coming in the vineyard. So that's why we plant them here. But what you can see is the grapes that we're planting here. Sangiovese, Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, Petit Verdot. These are the 4 grape varieties that Dr. Moretti plants in his vineyard. Wow, look at that view. Imagine being a vine and looking at that sunset every evening. So located in the town of Arezzo, they're at 1,000 feet altitude. They don't have the same stony soil that you find in Chianti Classico, but they are up on that hillside, right coming up on this bench land here, on this mountain. Those are the Apennine Mountains there. There you see them, bringing lots of cool wind and air down into these vineyards. And as they do that, they are allowing the wine to stay vibrant and balanced. So beautiful property. This is where Dotto Moretti's sister lives. I was able to have lunch here on one occasion, and she is a phenomenal cook. Made us homemade pasta. We ate pheasant that he had shot earlier in the morning in his property. He owns 825 acres of land, and he only leaves 137 acres for vine. The other 700, 650, whatever it is, he leaves those for hunting. Family owned since 1950. So beautiful property. This is where glass number 2 comes from, and that is Tenuta Sette Ponti Crognolo. What does Crognolo mean? Crognolo is the name of the native Tuscan plant that grows wild out in the Arezzo area. This wine is 100% estate fruit. If you don't know why that's important, what's a good analogy? Well, if you came to me and you were going to sell me grapes, but I don't know how you grew those grapes, then I'm taking a little bit of a risk. Maybe you did a great job. It's very possible. But there's also a chance that maybe you cut some corners. So when we say 100% estate, that's me telling you, look, all these grapes come off Tenuta Sette Ponti property. They vouch for every single berry that went into that bottle of wine. And this is a quality statement. 100% hand harvested. Why that's great? Because you're going out in the vineyard and you're hand selecting just the very best grapes. You're leaving the green and less ripe, maybe even diseased berries there on the vine. That's why hand harvesting is so special. This wine right here, 90% Sangiovese, 10% Merlot. This is going to be a great comparison to the next red wine, but don't go there yet. I want you to first take this wine and spin it in your glass. Allow the aromas to let themselves out. Allow the oxygen to go in and open it up. Spin this wine in your glass, smell this wine, and you should pick up wonderful dark fruit aromas, dark cherries, and some red cherry too, but you also get that wonderful plum and that earthy, savory note. In Italian wines, I always pick up aromas of cured meats. And it's a beautiful, rustic, savory flavor and aroma. It's very complex. It's not something you just pick up and say, oh, red cherries. Yeah, that was nice. No, this is Italy. We don't do that. You smell it. Close your eyes. Focus on what you're smelling. And then smell it again. And then taste it and move it all around your mouth. The tannins should be firm and taut, and the acid should be high. This is Italy, and this is premium quality red wine. Aging 14 months, French barrique, 50% new oak. This baby can age. This is one of my favorite wines. I think this wine, which is very affordable, way over delivers for the cost. There is a famous restaurant in Florida, in Tampa, Florida, so not too far from you guys, closer than New York at least. And it is called Burns Steakhouse. It's a very famous place in the United States because it has a 1 million bottle wine list. Now, why it's such a special place to go is because they have very old, beautiful, hand-selected wines. And they serve them by the glass as well. And I was eating there at the bar about a year ago, and they had this wine, 2002, I think it was, by the glass. And it was still bright, young, fresh, lots of fruit. The tannins had softened, but really integrated really well with the wine. It was perfect. So while you can enjoy this wine now, and I encourage you to, as you can see right now, with time and with age, it becomes even more complex and integrated. What are you going to have with this wine right now? I hope you're eating something, because Italian wines beg for food. They're not meant to be drunk on their own. It's okay if you just have a couple pieces of salami, or if you have some nice Parmigiano in front of you, or a couple grissini, whatever it is, be sure you have something in front of you to go with these wines. Let's go to our last wine. Our last wine is all the way in the Maremma. Now, Maremma, where would that be? Well, let's take a guess here. Mare, in Italian, means sea. And this next location is located right along the sea. It runs from Livorno up here all the way down to the town of Grosseto down here. So this entire area is called the Maremma. Just like you have Chianti in here, right? This gray area is Chianti, and this blue area is Chianti Classico. And Arezzo is right there where we just were with Únete, Sette Ponti, drinking Crognolo. That's right there. This last wine comes from the Maremma. More specifically, the most premium place in the Maremma, the home of the Super Tuscan, Bolgheri. Now, let's take a closer look. There's the town of Livorno. There's the town of Grosseto. This is a fairly flat growing area versus all the hills. There's Arezzo, look, versus the hills of Arezzo. And it's here because it's flat and it's warmer because you're down by the sea that we use Bordeaux varieties. What are Bordeaux varieties? Bordeaux varieties are Cabernet Sauvignon, Merlot, Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, Malbec. Those are the 5 red Bordeaux varieties. And so for the first time in Italy's history, instead of planting Italian varieties, Sangiovese, Vernaccia, Vermentino, instead of planting those, they planted French Bordeaux varieties here because it's warmer and they make these bigger, more powerful wines. And that's what we have in glass 3. Jean-Marie asks, how long can you keep Crognolo in the cellar? That's a very good question. A lot depends on vintages. We are living in an era of about 4 or 5 years with incredible vintages from Italy. 2015, powerful, ripe, beautiful, jammy. 2016, not quite as jammy, but more acid. Some say the best vintage in the past 20 years. 17, a little bit cooler. 18, fantastic again. So if you take any of those vintages, easily, happily, I would put that in my cellar for 15 years. You can do 20, no problem. Again, you can enjoy it now. It depends what kind of wine you like. Do you like the fruit? Do you like all the jammy fruit and complexities of fruit flavors with the wonderful crisp acidity? Or do you prefer the complexities of savory, earthy, mushroom, developed fruit? Then you want to leave it in your cellar. Or maybe you're somewhere in between. Or maybe you go down to Oreo and you buy a case and you taste one every year for the next 12 years. That's what I would do. That sounds like a good idea to me. This here is the home of the Super Tuscan in the Maremma, Bolgheri. Now, you can see Arezzo here, you can see Montalcino here, and you see Chianti here. So we start here, we drove over to Arezzo, and then from Arezzo, we were going all the way to Bolgheri. So glass 1, glass 2, and now glass 3. Bolgheri. This is the town of Bolgheri. It's a fortified town. Remember, the towns in Italy were built 1,000, 2,000, 3,000 years ago. So these are old fortified towns. The entrance to this town right here was meant for horses, not cars. So you could only fit one car at a time. And the road here goes up. It's a cul-de-sac. It comes back around, and you've just done Bolgheri. Hope you got something else planned. But there are some incredible restaurants here. And if you walk out of Bolgheri and you walk about 100 yards down the road, you come to the most famed producer of Super Tuscan wine in all the world, all of Italy, because Super Tuscans only come from Italy, Sassicaia, from Tenuta San Guido. In the 1930s, they started planting Bordeaux varietals here, and this began a pioneering movement towards making red wines with Cabernet and Merlot. And this gentleman right here, the original Super Tuscan godfather, Mario Incisa della Rocchetta, started Sassicaia in 1968. Sassicaia has gone on to become probably the most famous wine in all of Italy. It was first released in 1968 and was the first Super Tuscan ever. No one ever prior to Mario Incisa della Rocchetta, who you see right here, who was from Piedmont, not Tuscany. He married a Tuscan princess, is why he was there. Planted Cabernet Sauvignon for the first time and made a wine from entirely Cabernet Sauvignon. People thought he was crazy. People couldn't believe it. And then a certain gentleman, you may have heard his name before, Robert Parker, tasted it in 1985 and gave it a perfect 100.4. Now, because Sassicaia has done so well, because it's so famous, it has its very own appellation, Bolgheri Sassicaia. No other wine in all of Italy has its own appellation. That's how famous this wine is. And unfortunately, this is not the wine you have in glass number 3, but don't worry, there is a but. Have the baby Sassicaia, un bambino, made same people at the same estate, but vines, and with the blend of Merlot in it. Sassicaia, 100% Sauvignon, 3% Cabernet Franc. Guidalberto that you have has about 60% Sauvignon, 40%. And my good friend Gregory, he remembers winning a bottle at my class one year of Sassicaia. And did you ever drink that wine? You'll have to let us know. Or are you saving it for a special occasion? Maybe for the next time I'm in Puerto Rico, we can drink it together. So, Tour de San Guido, located in, made one wine for over 40 years. Only 3% of the estate is planted to vineyards, much like Dr. Moretti from Únete, Sette Ponti, class 2. Wine is a hobby. He made his money in Prada. This is something he enjoys doing. He does very well. He makes beautiful first-class wines. Same here. This is a hobby. They make the best wines, the best Super Tuscan in all of Italy. It's a hobby. Their real business? Horses, horse racing. They raised the most famous horse, Rebo, to ever run in Italy. When Mario came to Florence and then went out to Bolgheri with his new princess wife, died, he didn't know he was going to change winemaking in Italy forever, but he did. And this is where Guidalberto, and this is what you have in glass 3, located just down the street from our winery that makes Sassicaia. First vintage was in 2000. Separate facility completely from where we Sassicaia. Small production in cases. And it's a blend, Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot, as I mentioned. All natural yeasts, which gives you greater complexity. We age it 50 months in French barrique and American barrique. This is the first time we're having one that's got American oak in it. Now, they don't have a lot of American oak, but why would they use American oak? Because they're looking for a little bit more spice, more cedar and oak intensity. French oak is much more restrained. So when you add the two together, you get beautiful harmony. And that's why they do that here. The winemaker is the same in both places. A very talented woman by the name of Graziana Cassini. So, I'm going to leave us here. Wouldn't that be great? This was a storefront I passed as I was walking through the streets of Florence. And some people say, well, Nick, what am I going to eat with these wines? Easy. Prosciutto. Formaggio. Doesn't matter which formaggio. Queso. Doesn't matter which queso. As long as it is in that store, I would eat it. But there's many types of cheese coming from Italy. And then pasta. What Florence in Italy is, Tuscany is very famous for is their pasta with boar ragu. And I talked to you about the boar a little bit that run wild in the forests that the Tuscans love to hunt and eat. And it's a very popular dish here, at least in New York in the winter. So any of these foods, because they have richness that you have in the cheese or the fattiness that you have in the cured meats, the acid in these red wines cuts through it and balances it perfectly. Same with the pastas. The pastas have a red tomato sauce. Well, tomatoes are acidity, so they balance out that acidity perfectly. This last wine in your glass, Guidalberto, go ahead, smell that wine. Remember, spin it around in your glass, and you should get a little bit more weight and body in this wine. And that's because now moved on from Sangiovese in glass number 2 to Cabernet Sauvignon and Merlot in glass 3. Merlot gives you that breadth, that body, that weight. Cabernet Sauvignon gives you that structure and that tannin. And when you combine them together, beautiful Super Tuscans like you have right now in glass number 3. I don't think I could tell you which of these 3 I prefer. I think all beautiful, and they all can age very well. How do I know that a wine can age well? Well, if it has high acidity, it usually can age pretty well. That's one of the most important aspects to wine. So with that, I want to say thank you to Visual El Oreo Juarez. You can go to San Juan or Ponce to buy any of these wines until Friday, Freaky Friday 13th. We'll give you a 15% discount. I don't know if you deserve it, but we'll give it to you. So go in, tell them you know me, and they'll give you a discount. Thank you guys very much. Wonderful joining you. Have a good night.